Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We've got week 2 of the NFL season in the books, and it was a sad ending for us in the late game on Monday night, which we will get to a little bit later. Everybody pouring one out for good old Nick Chubb and the Browns. But it was an exciting weekend otherwise. I guess actually all 3 of our teams lost, so it wasn't exciting for us for real life NFL football. I have to say, Denver, the cruelest cut of all, hitting a 50-yard Hail Mary only to have the worst 2-point play in the history of time, and me not understanding how math works and thinking when they hit that Hail Mary, all they had to do was kick the extra point to win, and then realizing we were 2 points down. That was quite a swing of emotions. Dennis, I hope your weekend was a little less emotional.
Well, the Buckeyes looked like they were supposed to against an opponent like that. The Lions, however, did not. It was not a great day. And then as a Browns fan also, I'm sure Matt will speak to this, but you can't turn the ball over 4 times, whether you lose Nick Chubb or not. But I think from a fantasy standpoint, though, one of the worst things about the Denver game is, like, Brandon Johnson didn't help anybody, okay? Not a single soul. I bet he didn't help anybody even in best ball.
I actually think I was playing him in one of my deep leagues.
Oh, of course you were, Homer.
Yeah, pour one out for Nick Chubb. That's about all I got to say. Best running back in the NFL, and to have an injury like that, I mean, I think that might actually have been the last time we'll have seen Nick Chubb in a Cleveland Browns uniform. I don't think that's I hope that's not true, but that's possible. I mean, I imagine. I don't think there's been anything confirmed yet, but a lot of the people have said it's likely a dislocated knee, which means likely multiple torn ligaments, something fairly close to what happened to him in college. And it took him about 1.5 years to really bounce back from that. His senior year in college at Georgia, he wasn't great, but then like that first year with Cleveland, obviously, that's when we saw the greatness out of Nick Chubb. So, I mean, just at his age, to think maybe he's 1.5 years away from even getting back close to what he was, like, it just sucks. As I said, I mean, you can call me a homer all you want. In my opinion, I think he was the best pure runner in the NFL as a running back. And so to see him go down like that 2 games in on a team that had high hopes, it sucks, because I think he's one of the best players in the NFL.
Who was announcing the game last night? I completely
Troy Aikman and Joe Buck.
Yeah.
So, and it was whichever one of them was like, oh, Ford is so much faster than Nick Chubb. You know what? Nick Chubb would not have gotten caught on that 69.5-yard touchdown. Nick Chubb would have housed that thing.
I think Jerome Ford just didn't expect to run for that long, because he looked like he was about to throw up on the sideline after going that far. But, the Chubb injury is a perfect segue to us checking in on our injuries,
Matt.
What?
Nobody likes Chubb injuries.
No. The Nick Chubb injury is a perfect segue, though, to talk about an update on our redraft league, because Nick Chubb was the cornerstone of my team, which is now 2-0, but I'm not feeling great about my future prospects like I once was. But how did you guys do this week?
So I pulled out a victory. I thought I didn't. I thought I was gonna have to struggle against Matt Jackson there, DHH Matt, but put up 180 points, highest score in the league. Did that on the back of Lamar Jackson, and got 32 points from Daniel Jones in that comeback. Gabe Davis put up 21 for me, 24 from Justin Jefferson. So for me, I had a good day. Matt Jackson, he got 24 from Hurts, 21 from Bijan. I thought it was going to be a rough day for me. Addison put up 17 for him, but was able to eke it out. Sports Fanatic MB, man. Tough day. Got beat by 60.
Yeah, I got blitzed. I had 2 people score 20. Nobody else broke, I think, double digits. It was not a pretty day. That's all right.
You still had Aaron Jones in your lineup too.
Congrats to Jonathan. Yeah, I set my lineups on Thursday, and they don't change after that. So if the player's out, they're out.
So, days. Matt Fox, you seem to let's see, where'd you go here? More fast. You put up 171 points yourself.
Yeah, I probably would have had the league high score had Nick Chubb not, because he had 6.4 points. So he was going for me.
Keenan Allen did you right? 31 points there.
Yeah, my team's not too bad. I probably have too many Broncos considering how much they suck.
Well, you have too many Broncos, and Trash Talker 67, 87, whatever the hell that number is, has too many Browns. Though I will say, when I talked to her today, she was kind of excited about having drafted Jerome Ford in the startup draft.
Yeah, that doesn't end up too bad. I don't understand why people sent me trades on Sleeper of me getting Jerome Ford and giving them a first-round pick when I don't have Nick Chubb on my team. What team is doing this?
Somebody that thinks you'll pay a first round for it. They must think you're Sports Fanatic MB.
They must have just sent it to everybody in the league, waiting to see if somebody will bite.
Right.
Well, let's begin our dive through the rest of the week 2 action. We will start with the Atlanta Falcons Green Bay Packers. Turned out to be kind of an interesting game. The Falcons came and got the win at the end to go to 2-0, 25-24 over the Packers. Dennis, for the Packers, Jordan Love threw 3 touchdown passes again for the second straight game. How are you feeling about him?
I like what I'm seeing. It'll be nice, honestly, if he continues to play well, and maybe some of these coaches and GMs and owners will take heed of what happened in Green Bay. Do I think he's going to be their 3rd straight Hall of Fame quarterback? No, I don't. It could happen, but that's not what I'm thinking. But he looks like he's going to be a decent quarterback. He was very efficient in week 2, spread the ball around to 9 different receivers. They're actually getting down the field. 4 different receivers had catches of 30 yards or more. So I think they're gelling. It's a young team with lots of young receivers. It wouldn't surprise me if they extend him, if he continues to play like this, if they give him a legitimate extension instead of the tryout extension they gave him before this season.
Matt, on the flip side, Desmond Ridder didn't do a lot as a passer in the Falcons' first win. A little bit better this week, 237 yards. Unfortunately, mistook Jonnu Smith, I think, for Kyle Pitts a few times on 6 of those targets, but also got a rushing TD. Do you like the progression you're seeing?
Yeah, I think he's doing exactly what Arthur Smith wants him to do. He's distributing the ball. Not bad, 19 of 32 for 237 yards. It was only 115, I think, in week 1. So he's not going to be out there putting up Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger's last couple years in Pittsburgh numbers, but he's doing what needs to be done. Obviously, getting the rushing touchdown really helps him, added 39 yards rushing. I don't know that he's a guy that you're going to be thrilled to start every week, but if you have him in a super flex league, I think he's going to end up probably being a low end QB2, which, maybe not help you win the league, but it's not going to help you lose the league, I guess.
That's a fantastic way of putting it. I'm just happy the Falcons are 2-0 because I thought they could make the playoffs, and Unfortunately, though, now everyone in the NFC South that's not named the Carolina Panthers is 2-0. On to the next game. Buffalo Bills hosted the Las Vegas Raiders, and boy, do the Raiders wish they had not made the trip. Maybe they actually didn't make the trip based on the score. It was 38-10. Buffalo. Dennis, we expected Josh Jacobs to maybe be a little bit slow coming back last week, but 9 carries for -2 yards on Sunday. Does catch 5 passes for 51, but Zamir White had 22 on 4 carries. Are you starting to worry a little bit about Jacobs?
He's dominating the snaps, 72% to 15% for White and Bolden. Touches 37-6 versus the other backs over the 2 games. He had a negative 0.21 yards before contact. So I don't know that I'm really chalking up the performance to Josh Jacobs so much as I'm chalking it up to that offensive line is really struggling. Jimmy G is a dink and dunk quarterback. I think they'll come around and win some games. They're not a happy team. We know Devontae Adams is grumpy. Jacobs just, he's back in on the team. He didn't like his situation. He's just putting in his time trying to get out. And after watching J.K. Dobbins go down and then Nick Chubb go down, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts to play very cautious, which isn't going to be good. He's in that catch-22 that if he goes out and busts his ass and has a great season, he's still a running back. And if he plays cautious, he probably opens himself up to even more potential injury and doesn't put up the numbers to garner a big contract. So hopefully athletic pride will take over. And I'd like to say I hope Josh McDaniels gets himself together. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I also do not think that's going to happen. On the flip side, Matt, James Cook putting up some big numbers on the carries he's getting, but we saw Latavius Murray get 6 carries, caught 2 balls, got a touchdown. Damian Harris getting 7 carries, got a touchdown. What do you make of the Bills' backfield?
I mean, it sucks. That's what I make of it. If you're starting anyone, I think at this point it's got to be Cook. I mean, he had 21 touches compared to the next closest was Latavius Murray with 8 altogether, 6 rushes and 2 catches. I think to me personally, from the parts that I watched this game, I actually thought Damian Harris looked better than Latavius Murray as a rusher. But if they're going to be splitting those guys when they start getting down into the red zone, I don't want to start either one of them. Again, my big fear with James Cook is it feels like when they're getting down in the red zone, they're going to someone else like Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, and they still have Josh Allen. So I think you're hoping Cook scores from further out. I wonder if he ends up being that guy who's in between the 20s. They're using him as a receiving back. So I think that part of it gives him some value. I mean, 123 yards on the ground. What did he have? 36 yards receiving on 4 catches. That's a good day. That's an RB2 kind of day. If you can get that from him most weeks, I think he's the one you want to start over anybody else.
And I think, unfortunately for fantasy, we've learned that the Bills finally realized they needed somebody other than Josh Allen to be their goal line back, which doesn't mean those backs are people you want to start every week, but it certainly diminishes a little bit of the top end for Josh. One of the marquee matchups of the morning was the Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Ravens getting the 27-24 victory as they moved to 2-0. Bengals starting 0-2. Matt, for the Bengals or for the Ravens receivers, we kind of saw it all over the board. Nelson Aguilar, 6 targets, caught 5 passes, 5 targets for Flowers, caught 4 passes, 3 receptions apiece for Odell and Rashad Bateman, who saw 7 targets combined. Is there a receiver that you like here?
He didn't have a massive day, but I think it's Zay Flowers, and I think I'm going to end up being wrong on Zay Flowers. I did not think he was going to have the impact because I felt like him and Mark Andrews were going to be working too much in the same part of the field, and Mark Andrews was going to dominate that, and they were going to try and use Bateman or Odell as like that deep threat that we saw Todd Monken use, Ladd McConkey in Georgia, and then Odell Beckham in that role in Cleveland when he had his best year in Cleveland. I mean, Zay Flowers had 5 targets, which was second best. As you mentioned, Nelson Aguilar kind of led the team there, but he had some great catches in that game. He was the guy the week prior. I think if I'm really starting someone, it's him. I don't feel great about starting him and expecting him to be like a wide receiver 2 for me. Maybe not even like a high-end wide receiver 3, but I feel comfortable, especially in some of the deeper leagues we play, just throwing him in my flex spot every weekend. If he's going to give me 4 for 62, that's 10 points. I'm perfectly fine with that out of a flex player.
Dennis, on the flip side, Bengals start 0-2, another kind of middling game for Joe Burrow. He's still struggling with that calf injury. There's even been talk he might sit out week 3. Is it time to worry about the Bengals?
I think so. Jamar Chase talked in training camp. Joe, sit out. Come back week 5. I did it. It was great for me. I got over my injury. It looks like we're heading towards extended missed time because he's getting hit. The Bengals are giving up the 5th quickest time to throw at 2.2 seconds. The 2nd quickest if you include only legitimate starting quarterbacks. He's getting pressure early at almost the fastest rate in the NFL. That calf, I feel like that it's something that's going to nag on him all season if he doesn't give it the appropriate amount of time, and he didn't do that. Now, he's heavily targeting his wide receivers, which he should, between Chase and Boyd and Higgins. He's got 3 very, very good wide receivers. 28 out of 41 attempts have gone to the wide receivers. My concern, though, is that they're going to end up sitting him for a few weeks when if they had just sat him for a couple weeks at the beginning of the year, they may still be 0-2, but he'd be coming back healthy instead of going into what's probably going to be 4 to 6 weeks trying to get that thing healed again.
Yeah, not an optimistic situation. One of the more surprising games, especially the early window, was the Seattle Seahawks, who looked clinically dead in week 1, going to Detroit and pulling off the 37-31 victory in overtime. Matt, Gino had a better day, but Tyler Lockett really stepped up again. 10 targets, had 8 receptions, 2 touchdowns. Should we be looking at throwing him in our lineups?
I mean, I think because of just the name value alone, you're likely starting Tyler Lockett every single week. But let's just be honest. We're back to, was it 2021 Tyler Lockett, where every even week he was going off? I think you're not feeling great about him next week in week 3, but you're firing him up in week 4. I think we've seen this a lot from Tyler Lockett, where he has these great games, and then the next week kind of comes back to earth a little bit. Last week, what was he? 2 for 10. You're probably going to see like 4 for 40 next week. And then in week 4, he's going to go 7 for 140 and a touch or something like that. But I think you're playing him every week because he has the ability to do exactly what he did this week, getting you the 2 touchdowns.
Dennis, on the flip side, Detroit's still 1-1, but would like to see a little bit better. One of the more exciting bright spots seems to be Josh Reynolds. He had another pretty good day. Caught 4 for 80 in week 1, caught 5 for 66 and 2 touchdowns in week 2. Are you kind of liking him as the number 2 after Amon-Ra?
Yeah, he seems to have really established himself as the Lions wide receiver too. I think when Williams comes back, I think Reynolds holds on to it, and Williams becomes the big play guy, the wide receiver 3. That when they go to 3 wide receiver sets, you'll have Williams and Reynolds on the outside, and Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot. He's got great chemistry with Jared Goff, going back to their days as Rams. Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, was with the Rams. And so they like the consistency and his basically he just works his butt off to try to make plays and do the right things. I think you're looking at him as a weekly flex play with low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3 upside. I think his targets will suffer. I don't think he gets enough targets to push for wide receiver 1 status, but I think if I can start him as my wide receiver 3 or flex, I'm okay with that.
Matt, oh wait, that was the end of that game. We're going now to the Indianapolis Colts, 31, Houston Texans 20. Matt, it was a pretty good day for the Colts. You know, Anthony Richardson looked pretty good before going out with a concussion.
Just a week early on the 2 rushing down prediction, huh? Just a week early.
But, you know, in the backfield, Zach Moss, they acquired him last year. He broke his arm in training camp, didn't hear a lot from him. Back healthy, he dominated the backfield touches, 18 carries, 88 yards and a touchdown, caught 4 passes. It was Deion Jackson-Who. Do you like Zach Moss going forward?
I think you have to. Yeah, Deion Jackson-Who. I started Deion Jackson a couple places. That 0 didn't help.
As did I.
Yeah, I think you have to start Zach Moss. I mean, he's going to be the one who gets the workload here, 18 carries. Now, the one thing I will say, in my opinion, I don't think he looked great from some of the runs that I saw. I think a lot of that goes to Anthony Richardson and what he's able to do. I'll be very curious to see if Zach Moss can do what he did with Gardner Minshew at quarterback if Richardson's not able to come back this week because of the concussion. But I think the fact that they didn't even give Deion Jackson a shot means you've got to start Zach Moss, and he's going to be at least serviceable for you until Jonathan Taylor comes back.
Dennis, on the flip side, you were bullish on Nico Collins and Tank Dell for the Texans. Each of them caught 7 passes and got a touchdown. Do you feel good about that?
So, I'm going to have to really do some soul searching this offseason, because these little tiny wide receivers, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, all look pretty good. And, they're putting up legitimate stats and fantasy points. And, CJ Stroud was pounding the table for Tank Dell. Maybe not pounding the table, but he said, hey, go get me this guy. As encouraged as I am about Collins and Dell, I'm more encouraged about CJ Stroud. The Texans they're trusting him to throw. I get it. They're playing behind. They were down 4 offensive linemen last week, and they still let him throw 40 some times. He leads the NFL in dropbacks, 19th in first read throws, meaning he's going through his progressions. He's not, just zeroing in on the first guy. And Houston's given up a league-leading 11 sacks. Tell me if we've seen this David Carr movie before.
One of the cars.
Dell, he's playing 31%, almost 32% of his snaps out of the slot. 76% route participation last week, up from 41.5% the week before. I believe that ties directly to Noah Brown going on IR and Dell being definitely the 3rd wide receiver. But Nico Collins, he looks like he's stepping up to be the number 1 there. The stereotypical alpha archetype, big wide receiver. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue to develop. Dalton Schultz is providing a little bit of stability. They really need to get their offensive line back intact, get everybody healthy and up there in front of Stroud. I know they're 0-2, but I like what's going on with the Texans.
Well, that'll bring us to our next contest, which was one of the better contests of the morning as well. Kansas City Chiefs get the 17-9 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Matt, Travis Kelce was back. He had an okay day, but we did see a better day from Kadarius Toney, who caught all 5 of his targets for 35 yards, and Sky Moore, who caught 3 of his 4 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown. Are you feeling any better about the Chiefs receivers?
Nope. Said it Friday. It's just Travis Kelce. If Sky Moore can do this, I'm going to say for at least 2 more weeks, maybe 3. If he does it for 2 more weeks, I'll throw him in my flex spot and see, I'm ready to get hurt again. So maybe I'm all about, giving a shot to people when they've proven me wrong. But I mean, 5, 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, like it's so all over the place until you see the targets Travis Kelce got, which is 9. I mean, I think he's the only one you're starting every week. Deep leagues that we're in, sure. You really want to throw Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney in your lineup? you probably could do worse. You could have started Deion Jackson like I did. I'd have taken Kadarius Toney's 5 for 35 at that point. But I think you've got to see it for multiple weeks before you feel comfortable putting anybody else in your lineup.
Dennis, on the other side, week 1, it was all about Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones. Week 2, he seemed to only have eyes for Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. What do you make of this passing game in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think some of it is game planning. Ridley still got decent volume. And I think Ridley, he just didn't convert. And Zay Jones had a couple end zone shots. He just didn't get his feet down. So it wasn't for lack of opportunity, but it certainly feels like when you look at 14 targets for Christian Kirk, that it was we need to get this guy involved. We paid him big money last year to come in and kind of be the tone setter to help turn our locker room around. And Kirk did exactly what they needed him to do. Was he miscast as the wide receiver 1? Yeah, probably, but they weren't getting a wide receiver 1 to come there, so somebody had to do the job. 71% slot rate was down from 90.5 in week 1, so they did split him out a little bit more. I think it may turn into one of those San Francisco situations where there's only so many points to go around. It's definitely Warren's keeping an eye on. I think that Kirk is still more of a flex play for me, as is Zay Jones. And I think I typically am going to want Kirk more because of the PPR potential versus Jones, who I think is going to have to rely on touchdowns to be relevant. But I'm still comfortable starting Ridley. He looks good.
On to the next matchup, which was the Chicago Bears at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers getting the 27-17 win. Matt, the Bears continue to be a struggle. Justin Fields turns it over a few times. DJ Moore caught a few more passes, which is good, but they struggled to run the ball. Fields only 3 yards rushing, does get you that rushing touchdown. But what do you make of this Bears offense?
It's bad. I mean, I don't know what else to do. Justin Fields hasn't played well either. I mean, at least last year he was scoring a bunch of fantasy points, so you didn't care that he wasn't playing much better. But was it 55% completion? Like, that's not going to get it done. He's really got to step up, or I think there's a realistic shot that he may not be the Bears starting quarterback next year. And that's not something I really thought I'd be saying right now. He's just not looked good. I mean, the one thing I guess you could say is that, if you're a DJ Moore fan, at least you're happy 100 yards on 6 catches, right? Like, didn't think that was coming, but this team just overall, they look bad. I mean, 7 rushes for Khalil Herbert, 4 for Roschon Johnson. They couldn't get the running game going last week. They're not doing it again here. Like, I just don't think this is a balanced offense. I think honestly, I don't think it's Matt Eberflus, right? I'm not misremembering that. That's their head coach.
Yeah.
I think that was a bad hire at this point. I don't think it's unfair to say we're in our second year of this. It's not working.
The offense is should be Luke Getsy.
Yeah. So who's more on the hot seat, Getsy or Fields?
Well, Getsy's probably going to get fired first because Justin Fields was the first round pick, and they'll see if they can make it work. But I wouldn't be surprised if, say, it continues down this road. I would not be surprised if Getsy's fired either some point in time during the season or at the end of the year. They're going to bring somebody else in, and then they're going to bring in another quarterback, and it's going to be a competition. And if Justin Fields struggles 2 games out of the gate, they'll just pull him and throw whoever else in. Like, I think Fields' time is limited if he does not turn it around. Because now we're a full year of seeing the same stuff over and over again.
Well, there were several plays. I think if you looked around the internet, you could find it looked like receivers running the same exact routes. And it was like, is he calling the play wrong in the huddle, and that's why they're doing that? Or do the receipts I get it. We could say, oh, well, if one of them was Chase Claypool, we're like, yeah, he's mailing it in. But it wasn't always Chase Claypool.
He actually had a better day too.
He did.
Couldn't do much worse though.
Yeah.
So. Well, one quarterback that has surprised us, Baker Mayfield. He's thrown for 490 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, as the Buccaneers are 2-0. Dennis, have we been selling them a little short?
I don't think so. I think we've been selling him just right. You know, they're running a very balanced offense. At 68 pass attempts, 67 rushes. And, you know, to be fair, they haven't been super productive on the rushes. Week 1 was rough on the ground. You know, Rachaad White had a good game this week, but I don't think he's anything special. They're 13th in pass attempts, 12th in completion percentage, and 12th in yards per attempt. So, you know, they're in the top third. They're doing okay. 18th in ADOT. So, and to counter that, here's a weird stat. He has the 4th most deep throws with 10, but yet they're like in the bottom third with ADOT. So he takes, it's like he's taken a couple deep shots here and there, but everything else is really, really short. It's working for Mike Evans. And if you roster Mike Evans right now, you're happy as hell. Baker knows where his bread is buttered, and it's Evans and it's it's Evans and it's Goodwin. And if Rachaad White can keep stepping up, that'll be great as well. Their offensive line is another one that, you know, lacks depth.
Might explain why his ADOT's so short. He doesn't have a lot of time for them to get downfield. Speaking of teams that seem to be blaming their entire 0-2 start on their offensive line, the Los Angeles Chargers went to Tennessee and dropped another close one, 27-24. Our man Brandon Staley, nothing like taking full ownership and responsibility in his press conference, talking about how their offensive line has failed them for 2 weeks in a row, even though they produced 58 points. Matt,
Fire him. He should have been fired last year. I don't know what we are doing here, folks. We are wasting Justin Herbert's talent. I mean, Dennis just talked earlier about the game that Keenan Allen had. Like, Keenan Allen's got maybe 2 years left in him before he's not going to be this good of a wide receiver. They have all that talent on defense, and you lost to the Tennessee Titans? It's embarrassing.
Dennis, on the other side for Tennessee, the second week in a row, they're mixing Tyjae Spears in a way that we haven't really seen them use a complimentary back behind Derrick Henry in the last couple of years. He got 8 carries, made the most of it, 49 yards, got a couple of receptions. Are you starting to feel Spears maybe working himself into flex territory?
Yeah, you know, are we really clamoring to get that 7.5 points or, you know, week 1's 3.8
Week 10 you will be
into our lineup? You know, maybe once we get the you know, Derrick Henry's foot starts acting up again. I definitely think that if Spears is on your waiver wire, he's a stash in redraft. He's a guy you're going to go get. Right now, they're still riding the Derrick Henry train, and until he breaks down, it's a crapshoot. I don't think Spears is startable if Henry is healthy, because is he explosive? Yes. Is he going to break one off? Maybe. We just don't know. It almost feels like right now Spears is a, hey, we got 6 teams on a bye. Got to start somebody in that flex spot starter. But if Henry gets dinged up, or if Spears keeps popping off, I don't know that, you know, even if Spears keeps popping, I don't think they just push Henry aside or make it a timeshare. I just feel like Vrabel isn't going to do that. You know, his snaps dropped from 54% in week 1, where he actually outsnapped Derrick Henry, to only 37% in week 2. Now, he was more productive in week 2. And, you know, I don't know if maybe that becomes the formula. I like Tyjae Spears. I just, right now, he's literally, you know, last spot or 2 stash on my bench, just in case something happens.
He's just here to prove that knee ligaments don't matter.
Well, hopefully he's giving Nick Chubb a call and being like, hey, buddy.
On to the most ridiculous game of the day, probably the most ridiculous game of the weekend, which was the New York Giants got a 31-28 victory over the Cardinals. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, we thought the Giants would win. Well, the Giants began their season outscored 60-0 through 6 quarters, a 20-0 deficit in the half, and managed to come back to get the 31-28 victory. But Matt, should the Giants be feeling good about this victory?
Absolutely. They came back and won. I mean, if you had just lost to Arizona after what? Arizona put up 28 points unanswered, right? Like 28 points and then
no, it was 20 points unanswered, and then they had a 28-7 lead. So
gotcha. I mean, still, as you mentioned, 60 points scored on them through 6 quarters. They hadn't done anything. And then for them to turn it around the way they did, and I thought Daniel Jones played really well in the second half. Obviously, you're definitely feeling even more better in the fact that now you know Saquon Barkley's only going to be out for a couple of weeks, as we were worried he might be out for a long time with the way he was having to get helped off the field. But I think they do. I mean, I honestly think we're starting to hopefully figure out what this wide receiver room looks like as well. We know it looks like Darren Waller is going to be the main guy, but the second week in a row that Darius Slayton has got targeted heavily. I know Jalen Hyatt had the better day, but he only had the 2 targets. And so we're going back to the Tennessee days where like he just gets open and makes the big play. Great best ball guy, but like I think you can feel comfortable starting Darren Waller right now as well in this offense. But yeah, if you're a Giants fan or roster any of these guys, you are thrilled with the way this game turned around. You were not enjoying it to start the day.
Dennis, on the Cardinals side, Josh Dobbs didn't look too bad. And more importantly, he gave 8 targets to Zach Ertz and 10 targets to Hollywood Brown. Are you feeling better about those guys if you have them in fantasy?
You know, they're we thought they were going to be playing from behind a lot, so it makes sense to go to target these 2 guys who would seem to be their most productive players. You know, Josh Dobbs is playing his heart out. He's kind of trying to say, look, I'm nobody's bridge quarterback. I'm a legitimate NFL quarterback. And there are a couple teams out there right now, I think, that are like, man, we could have had Josh Dobbs. Ertz is 29.5% target share. First on the team through 2 games, team leading 0.35 targets per run. So Ertz is he at that point of his career where, you know, he's a catch and fall guy? Yes, but he gets open. He's you throw the ball to him, he's going to catch it. And Dobbs is doing that. He's running 56.9% of his routes out of the slot though, which means they're playing some 2 tight end or they're flexing him out, giving him a little bit of room for those old bones. And, you know, Matt, much like the Giants and you and I, you know, when we're old, it takes us a little time to warm up. You know, sometimes my wife falls asleep. It takes me so long. But Brown leading the team with 83.1% route.
We might need context for that.
So those are the guys you want. I don't think and James Conner is, you know, he's playing much better. The line, you know, Houston's going, man, we could have had Arizona's offensive line. And that's saying something because we thought Arizona was going to be really, really bad. So
Arizona.
You know, I think that, you know, they're low end. Hollywood is a starter. He's probably a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside. And there's going to be a game where he catches a couple long passes and puts up a big day. And Ertz he's a high floor guy. He's going to get a lot of targets, a lot of catches, and not a ton of yards. But he's a floor guy at tight end. You know, he'll be in that, you know, 8 to 16 range pretty much every week.
On to a battle of NFC West teams. San Francisco 49ers headed to Los Angeles in what was kind of a fun and back and forth game, but the 49ers get the 30-23 victory. Matt, Brock Purdy remains undefeated as a regular season starter. How long can that continue?
I mean, with that defense, probably the rest of the year. Obviously, they're not going to go undefeated, but I mean, the thing is with San Francisco, we've always talked about, right? Like you're not necessarily wanting their quarterback, you want their running backs, and then as we talked about on Friday, 1.5 of their receivers, and this week it was just 1. It was Debo, and it was mainly because of the rushing as well, because Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle did nothing. But I mean, this defense is just so good. They don't have to rely on Brock Purdy. He just needs to manage the offense. So I think he's going to be a bit. Realistically, I think the first chance they have to lose is between weeks 5 and 8 before they hit their bye week. They get Arizona, they get the Giants and Arizona in the next 2 weeks. I think those are 2 wins. I mean, Giants maybe put up a fight, but I think we'll talk about that. It's a Thursday night game, I believe. I'm taking the 49ers. I'll just say it now. I think that they're going to win that. But then they get Dallas on Sunday night.
Especially if the Giants spot them 20, 25 points.
They get the Cowboys on Sunday night in Week 5. That's a game I think they could lose. Dallas, I still believe, is one of the better teams in the NFC. I was going to say maybe the Browns, so they get the week after that. Deshaun Watson's turned the ball over a bunch. They're going to win that game as well. Minnesota, Cincinnati. That's who they go going into the bye week. I could see them losing to one of those 4 teams. But even then, you go after that. Their schedule's not hard, folks. Philly and Jacksonville are the only 2 teams after the bye week that I think will give them trouble. Like, I would not be surprised if we're looking at the end of the year and Purdy's only lost 3 games. No, 2. No, 3. Yeah, 3. My bad. I think they could lose 3.
Dennis, on the Rams side, stop me if you've heard this before. Cam Akers, a healthy scratch now on the trade block. Feeling very 2022 all of a sudden. But what are you doing with Cam Akers?
Last year they benched him and were like, we're getting rid of you. We don't want you here. You're a cancer. And then he came back and rocked it out for a few games. Maybe this is McVay trying to motivate him. I know they're out there saying, oh, we're looking for a trade partner, but I mean, who's going to trade for a problematic running back that we know you're going to cut anyways? So I don't think he gets traded. I think he ends up getting cut. I think they're just, with whatever's going on, they're done with him. So I don't know if he's got a big mouth, if there's somebody there he doesn't like. I feel like if it was something to the point of, he was being abusive or something, they would in today's climate, if he was abusing somebody there, they would come right out and say it. There's, he is doing something that has got McVay saying, you just aren't earning the opportunity. And I've told you what you need to do, and you just refuse to do it. I've got 53 other guys or whatever, however many more, including the, 68 or 70 with the practice squad guys I can work on. I'm done with the squeaky wheel. You need to shut up and figure it out, and then we'll move forward. I understand where Akers might not be realizing what's going on, because what was his issue coming out of college? He doesn't have any vision. So it could very well be, the problem could be right in front of him in the locker room, and he just doesn't see it because he doesn't have any vision.
Well, on to Dallas, where the New York Jets travel.
A lot funnier in my head.
Well, I don't know what to do. I mean, I give up on Akers. Maybe he can go to the Jets. That's where seems to be a group of lost causes at the moment. The Jets traveled to Dallas, came up with the 30-10 loss. Matt, can the Jets continue with this kind of offensive output? Zach Wilson was their leading rusher, threw the 3 interceptions.
No, but I'll say I don't know the Jets will be this bad either. Dallas is I just talked about how I think Dallas could be the one that challenged the 49ers. I think it's fairly, at the beginning of the year, I believe I had it Eagles, 49ers, Cowboys. I might actually flip it now and say 49ers, Eagles, Cowboys. I've really been impressed with the 49ers through the first couple weeks here. But the Cowboys are one of the better teams in the NFC, and I think in the NFL in general. Talked about it on Friday. I said I wasn't playing anybody in this game. I think outside of Garrett Wilson, maybe I said play Breece Hall. Breece Hall had a bad game. Wilson still got his. So if you roster him or you started him, you're thankful for that. But I think Wilson will bounce back somewhat. But no, if he keeps playing like this, they're going to have to go they're probably going to make a trade with I think Dennis said this the other day with the Saints to get Jameis Winston. But you know what? I think if you're a Jets fan, I think you'd rather take the 30-30 than 15-35 that you're going to get from Zach Wilson at the moment. So I'd rather take that. At least you're getting 30 touchdowns from Winston.
Well, you were 5 years ago. Who knows what Jameis Winston is now?
Probably 24-24, probably. Still better what you're getting from Zach Wilson.
If nothing else, this Jets season has given us a great meme because when they shot Robert Sala's face the moment that Aaron Rodgers came out and they had to put Zach Wilson in, that man play poker with that man because he could not hide his disappointment. Dennis, on the flip side, speaking of disappointment, Brandon Cooks was out, so it should have been a good time for Michael Gallup to get himself going. 2 targets, 1 reception, 3 yards. Wasn't a factor in week 1 either. Is it time to give up on Michael Gallup?
He played the second most wide receiver snaps in week 2. So he was out there and he was running routes, but it just seems like, here's the latest thing I keep hearing about Dak is the reason his tight ends are so good is because he can't read the defense and he knows where the tight ends are going to be. I don't know if that's true. He certainly seems to know where CD Lamb is. And he's gotten the ball downfield to other receivers before. But, 8 targets for Pollard, 4 for Tolbert, 4 for Ferguson, 3 for Vaughn. It just is, sometimes you're just not open or sometimes you're just not early enough in the progression. And it seems like after being out for a year and a half and kind of away from the team, it kind of just feels like he's a forgotten man. So he may be better served going to a new opportunity. But this year, he's in there with, the guys that you're just, right now he's in there with Tyjae Spears. I got to start somebody, and this guy's playing some snaps, so let me throw him in there.
On to the final game of the late window on Sunday, and that was the Washington Commanders going into Denver and getting the 35-33 victory. Dennis, the Commanders are now 2-0, looking pretty decent there on offense. How are you feeling about the Sam Howell era?
Well, I liked Howell a lot coming out, and I wanted to see him do better. He's doing okay. He's middle of the pack. The team is in plays and total yards, rush yards, pass yards. They're playing competent football, if not like super exciting. Dotson and McLaurin are tied at 0.15 targets per route run, so they're both getting the ball plenty with their opportunities. McLaurin is 22.2% first read throws, Dotson 17.8%. So the 2 guys who are at the top of the pecking order in Washington are at the top of the pecking order, and they're getting their opportunities. I think it's a matter of time before they start to explode a little bit. Brian Robinson had a good game, and as long as they keep playing consistent football, are they going to go out and beat the best in the league? Probably not. Are they going to win the games they're supposed to? It seems like a very middle of the road team, and their numbers kind of support that.
Matt, meanwhile, Broncos 0-2. Not that exciting of a start to the Sean Payton era. No. What should we make of this team?
I don't know. I felt like they played better this week than they did last week. At least for what I saw, Russell Wilson looked better to me than what I saw last week. It's weird because I think coming into this year and even last year, we talked about how great this Denver Broncos defense was. And I thought that was really going to be, or at least continue to be, an anchor of this team. I thought we saw that in week 1 against the Raiders. I think, granted, the Raiders probably are not a very good team, but they held them down. But then to let Washington put 35 up on them, like, I don't know what, or if Sean Payton just doesn't care. I felt like his defenses were never that good in New Orleans, and maybe that's what's affecting Denver here. But I felt if they were able to keep the success with the defense they had last year, this was going to be a very good team in the AFC West. And it feels like they've moved away from that in a way. Like, the offense looked fine, but you have to have that defense, and the defense just seemed to be struggling Sunday.
So
all season, fire Vance Joseph. They should never have brought him back.
With Mims playing the 5th most snaps among wide receivers, 5th fewest is probably a more apt description, but yet making plays. Do we see him moving up, or is it a case where he just as a rookie, doesn't know the offense well enough to have Peyton's trust. You're our guy in Denver, Matt. What do you think?
I mean, I think they use him for a certain set of plays. They use Brandon Johnson for a certain set of plays, and they even had Humphrey out there for a certain set of plays too. I think it's also Judy coming back, but honestly, I don't know what they're doing. They were up 21-3 and they were driving, and there was pretty egregious face mask on Russell Wilson. His fumble that he turned over, the defender grabbed his face mask and threw him to the ground. That's how he lost the ball. He got it knocked out. He probably couldn't see. And then it just totally changed the game. But the defense, they looked bad in preseason. They actually did look bad in week one. There's a reason Denver's offense only got 6 drives in the entire first game.
Well, Deshaun Watson went out and got revenge for those face masks. It seems like he face masked everybody on the Steelers.
We'll get to that. That was a fascinating performance. I like Marvin Mims. I don't have a good feeling about Denver right now. I was surprised Sean Payton didn't retire after that game. Sunday Night Football, the Miami Dolphins went into New England, got the 24-17 victory. Matt, the Dolphins did a lot of their damage with 121 rushing yards from Raheem Mostert. When we've seen them commit to the run, they've been somewhat successful. Do you think that they should try to run more?
Absolutely. That's where Mike McDaniels comes from. That's his offensive system. It's why it's the same thing with Kyle Shanahan. You want that starting running back. And we said the same thing with Mike McDaniels. That's why everybody was excited to see what rookie they drafted. They drafted Devin Achane, and we haven't seen the dude. It's been Raheem Mostert. He's been amazing. So if you've rostered him, you've got to be thrilled. And I think it helps balance this offense out, though, if we're being honest. Like, I guarantee you most defenses, when they're coming into these games, they're looking at how do we stop Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? And then when you can hit them with Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane, I think Salvon Ahmed actually had the second most carries on the team, not who am I thinking of? Jeff Wilson. Is Jeff Wilson hurt?
He's hurt. Yeah, he's on IR.
That's why. So, I mean, you're not expecting Raheem Mostert to come out there and run for 120-plus yards and 2 touchdowns. I think that is a – Mike McDaniels said it before. Dang it, what's his name? Andrew Hawkins. When he was with the Browns, Andrew Hawkins said on the Tomahawk podcast with Joe Thomas, and he even brought up the tweet. He tweeted out back when Twitter was still Twitter, not X, and very in its infancy. He tweeted out that Mike McDaniels is going to make a brilliant head coach one day. And this was like years and years ago before anybody even knew who Mike McDaniels was, when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in the Johnny Manziel era. That's how far back we're going here, folks. He's a brilliant, brilliant guy. He's a fun head coach. I hate that he's with the Dolphins because I feel like it's going to lead to me getting a Dolphin tattoo one day. But like outside of that, like I think he's a brilliant head coach. He's one of the guys I root for.
Brandon Staley is going to lead you to getting a Dolphin tattoo.
Brandon Staley, if I ever meet him in person, by the way, I'm just going to right to the throat because my God, he's just killing me. Yeah, yes, I definitely think that they should run.
Dennis, on the other side, we're 2 games now into the new look offensive era for the Patriots. They've been competitive against pretty good teams in the Eagles and the Dolphins. How are you feeling about the Patriots offense under O'Brien?
It's the Bill O'Brien effect is that it's more passes per Mac, shorter YPA. In 21, they had a 7.3 yards per attempt. In 22, it was 6.8 yards per attempt, which surprises me with the defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator running the offense. But this year, through 2 games, it's only 5.7 yards per attempt. And it's not like Juju, Mr. Possession guy is out there racking up a ton of numbers. They don't have a Wes Welker or Julian Edelman out there. But they're playing faster. They're getting the ball out. Over the first 2 years, so in 21 and 22, the Patriots had 4 games where Mac started that they had over 70 plays. They're averaging 77 plays a game through 2 games in 2023. So they're trying to get the ball moving faster and keep teams off balance, fewer substitutions. They've got some guys, Devontae Parker is making some plays. He's not going to make a lot of plays downfield, but, he does have some opportunity. Hunter Henry's crushing at the tight end. He's a guy you want to have at the tight end position when you went low budget on it. And Ramondre is still Ramondre. I think usage of Zeke in week 1 scared a whole bunch of people, but Zeke's usage in week 2, it was the Ramondre Stevenson show. So I like what they're doing. I want to see them, make some plays, get a little bit more explosive. I think that'll come as they get more comfortable in that offense. So I don't hate it. Are they a playoff contender? You might squeak in. I don't think I have them in the playoffs. But I like the process better. Now, watch O'Brien will go get another head coaching job and they have to do something different again. But heck, by next year, McDaniels will probably be available to come back to OC.
I mean, by mid-year, he might be available. Monday night, we saw a doubleheader. The first of those was a battle of the NFC South. The New Orleans Saints went into the Carolina Panthers and got the 20-17 victory. Dennis, for a while there, it looked like Derek Carr only had eyes for Michael Thomas. He got 9 targets, caught 7 passes for 55 yards. Are you starting to buy in again?
I don't know how out I was, and that's probably my Buckeye fandom, but he seemed to really taper off in this game. Like I think he had 7 targets in the first half. I think as long as he's like in redraft, you ride him on your team, you keep him in your lineup until he's not playing. In Dynasty, I think it depends on your team situation. If you're competing and he's a depth player for you, unless you can use him as a tool to get you an upgrade on a player for your depth, you're probably going to hold on to him and ride him until he breaks down again. If you're not a competing team in Dynasty, he's a great guy to try to sell for, a 25-second because people are going to be like, no, we don't want to spend that much. Probably end up with a 3rd round pick to get him, maybe go 2 3rd-round picks. As long as he keeps producing, I think there's an opportunity there to make it work for you. But in redraft, I think you just got to ride him.
Matt, for the Panthers, their passing game remains a little bit of a quagmire, but 9 targets, 7 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown for Adam Thielen. You buying in a little?
Maybe. He only had 2 targets last week. I do think he is, at least in my opinion, the best route runner on the team. And Bryce Young, I think, will be looking for him specifically when they get down into the red zone. But it would be hard for me to consider him anything other than a flex right now. I think I need to see him consistently maintain at least a decent amount of targets for the next couple weeks. Now, granted, they didn't throw a lot in that Atlanta Falcons game, probably because it was so close for a long time. And Jonathan Mingo got 8 targets in this one, so right behind Adam Thielen. I don't know that I'd feel super comfortable about starting him next week, but if he's on your waiver wire, if you've got someone that you can drop, I might pick him up just in case, because I do want the one in this offense, because I think Bryce Young is playing well enough to support one wide receiver.
The final game of the week was another Monday night one. The nightcap was a battle of AFC North teams. Cleveland Browns came in and got the 26-22 game loss, but an even bigger loss for them was Nick Chubb, who got injured early in this game. Matt, you kind of mentioned, first of all, I would like to say all the time spent this weekend telling us that Amari Cooper was too injured to play, so that I subbed him out for subpar options in the Sunday slate really pissed me off every time he made catches. But Deshaun Watson seemed content to turn the ball over and face mask the crap out of Steelers players. Drum Ford, not too bad. 106 yards, kind of buoyed by 169-yard run. How does this offense fare without Nick Chubb?
Not great, Bob. I really don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Jerome Ford, I think, is going to be okay. but he's not Nick Chubb. I did like that he got the receiving touchdown. It is, again, something that I feel like he is good at. Not that Nick Chubb wasn't. They didn't really use him in that area. There's already been reports that the Browns are looking at other players. I know Kareem Hunt was one of them. I can't remember who the reported other running back was that they're going after. They're going to bring somebody in. Right now, all they have on the roster is Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. So, like, they're going to bring somebody else in. I think that Jerome Ford's going to remain the starter, even if they bring in a guy like Kareem Hunt. But if they bring in Hunt, I would not be surprised if we see more of that like 50-50 split we saw with Hunt and Chubb, because, again, Jerome Ford's just not meant as a shot at him. He's just not as talented as Nick Chubb.
Dennis, on the other side, speaking of 50-50 splits, we kind of, I know I did, not believe in Jaylen Warren as strong with all the hype coming out. But it sure seems like they're splitting touches. Warren, 6 carries for 20 yards, also caught 4 passes for 66. Najee Harris, 10 carries, 43, did most of that on 2 back-to-back really nice rushing plays. What do you make the backfield and the offense in general in Pittsburgh?
It's tough because so Najee is a volume back. If you give Najee Harris 8 carries, it's not going to look good. But if you give him 20 carries and let him wear you down with his 230-pound body, by the end of the game, you're looking at him going, okay, well, he had 20 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown, and he caught, 3 passes. But it's not exciting. He's kind of like Derrick Henry. Warren is popping off with these plays here and there, but the average it isn't blowing away what Harris's average is. The offensive line isn't playing great. They're both under 0.3 yards per carry before contact. So they're getting hit in the backfield. The plus side of it is that, either Najee has the power to get through it. Warren has the ability to kind of maybe bounce away. But Najee is giving off Trent Richardson vibes right now. I saw somebody post that in the chat. But it almost feels like he's like, well, I made it to the league. I've collected a paycheck. I've got the job. They brought in an undrafted free agent or 7th rounder or whatever Warren was. That's not really a threat to my high draft status. But they're running, Najee's getting a significant, share of snaps, 57 to 43%. But the touches are right around even, 11 for Najee, 10 for Warren. I think that they're part of what they're doing is they're wanting to throw the ball a little more, with Pickett being in his second year and adding a new offensive lineman, and then Pickens. Now we've got Deontay Johnson injured. We'll kind of see how week 3 shapes up. But it feels like the days of Najee Harris having back-to-back, 18 carry weeks may be behind us, because Warren pops off just enough to siphon carries and put Harris back down in that, dozen carry range, which at the end of the day is a decent amount of touches, but he's not the type of back that's going to put up big numbers on those.
Somewhere, someone's thinking of a way they can assemble a staff where Brandon Staley can be the head coach, Chance Joseph can take the defense, and Matt Canada can take the offense, and we can all just sit back and watch it happen.
Draft Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison.
Oh, God. Before we get out of here, Thursday Night Football coming up. Week 3 starts in a couple of days. As Matt mentioned earlier, the New York Giants traveling to battle the San Francisco 49ers. Matt already gave us his pick of being the 49ers. Dennis, do you feel any differently?
Nope. It's going to be the 49ers for me as well. I think the Giants, their weakest spot, which is wide receiver, is where the Giants give up the most fantasy points. And in part, it's because teams get behind and they got to throw. But, Paris Campbell and Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, they're not striking fear into anybody. And so I think that it's going to, and now they're going to be down. I know Dayball has said, oh, well, he's a fast healer. I'm not ruling him out. They're probably going to be down Saquon Barkley or have a significantly hampered Saquon Barkley. I don't think that bodes well for the Giants offense in general.
I am also taking the 49ers. This may not be the best game to watch. But football is football. Dennis, we don't have any games tonight or tomorrow, so if the people are feeling that angst, waiting for the games to start, what can they do?
Well, they should go listen to our back catalog, all 650 episodes. It'll keep them busy till Thursday night. They can put us on, continuous play. Give us a rating and a review. Listen to our sultry voices. We'll help you sleep. While you sleep, we will impart fantasy football knowledge and make you a better fantasy football player. Leave us a rating and a review.
Yeah, and you'll probably be more impressed with the tightness of our shows now because it's, an hour and 10 minutes for this recap. I remember a few years ago when we did some of those previews, we're probably closer to 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we went from 5 shows a week to 2 shows a week, and we went from, an hour and a half to 2 hours to pretty close to an hour every show.
Well, we will be back on Friday previewing all the rest of the Week 3 action. Until then, just be glad you're not a Denver Broncos fan.